Hello everyone. In our previous session, we have discussed about mod operator, how it works in Java, right? So in this session, we're gonna talk about the basic concept about if statement and if else statement. Okay, so how we're gonna use it and where we can use it, and we're gonna go with good examples so that you can get better idea of if statement and if else. Okay, so let's get started. So if statement, we're gonna talk about syntax of if statement. Syntax is nothing but the structure of if statement and where can we use it, right? So that is the major thing which we need to know, where we can use the if statement, right? So if you don't know how to use it, then it is no point in understanding, right? So let us get into if statement. Okay, so the syntax of if statement. So the syntax of if statements is like we have something called if followed by condition. So within the brackets we need to put it. So it is condition and starts the curly braces, and you're gonna write set of statements, whatever statements that satisfies the condition. So that's based on that condition, the statements has to be executed. So for example, this is an example which I'm giving right now. So we're gonna use multiple examples to understand the if condition, right? So if 10 is greater than 20, so which is like we wanted to print the greatest number. So in that case, if 10 is greater than 20, then it's gonna print 10 is greater. So that is what the condition, right? So if we're gonna print hello as well. So if you could clearly look into this condition, right? So this condition always returns Boolean. Okay, so Boolean is something called either true or false. So always remember this is Boolean. Okay, so the Boolean is something called either true or false. So true or false. Either true or false. The Boolean is always true or false. If this condition is true, if this condition is true, then we're gonna go for this one. If this condition is true, then this statements will get executed. If this condition is false, it won't go inside this if statement. It will go for the rest of the statements that which we have, right? So this is a syntax of if statements. We're gonna talk about with more examples where you'll get more information about it. Okay, so let's get into examples, right? So where can we use if statement? So we use if statement where we need to validate any condition based on that an action has to be performed. So in that case, we use if statement. Okay. And example two, there is like, to check a candidate is eligible for voting or not. So we all know that if a candidate is eligible for voting, he or she has to be greater than or equals to 18 of age is 18, right? So based on that only, you're gonna say that he is eligible, he or she is eligible, right? So to check a greatest number from two numbers, if you want to know, what is the greatest number from two numbers, then you're gonna use that is a condition which you're gonna validate, right? So our examples are based on some conditions which has to be validated, right? So still, if you are confused in writing the logics, then probably this is the channel where you're gonna get to know how to write the programming, right? Okay, so let's start with small programs and approach to solve the problem, right? So whenever you find a problem statement, you need to know how to solve that problem and what is the approach for solving the problem statement, right? So based on the concepts that which you have in programming language, right? So to find the largest or greatest number from two numbers, and we're going to write programs for to find the largest or greatest number from two. To check a number is even or odd, so which is the basic program which would be asked in, and if you are going as a fresher, they'll ask this program to write to check how good you are at writing the logics, right? and a person is eligible for voting or not. Okay, so these are three programs which we would be covering for as part of if as well as if else. Okay, so let's get into the other concept, that is if else statement. If else statements, just like based on if something is not happening, then you're gonna go for else, if or else. So in general, the dictionary meaning, if this is not happening, it should be happening. So in that case, we go for if else. So if you have only two options, like one is if or else, so only two options that which you have. For example, if you want to switch on a light, the light can blow, that is for switching on. When you off, it will off, right? So that is one example which I can say, real-time example. So syntax of if else statement. So just like if condition. So we have one more braces which will get added. That is else part which will get added. That's it. Nothing more else. Else doesn't have condition, because based on this condition. So based on this condition, if this condition is true, this set of statements will get executed. If this condition is false, then this set of statements will get executed. So that is the difference. So if you have only two options, like either this or that, then we go for if else. Okay. So you'll get more picture when we get into the programming one, right? So in that case, you'll have better picture about it. Okay. So next, let's get into to find the greatest or largest number, largest from two numbers, right? So let us consider there are two numbers, number 1 equals to 30, number 2 equals to 40. So we wanted to find this number, which one is the greatest one, right? So in that case, how do we do manually? Okay, so to find the greatest from two numbers, how do we do manually or maybe mathematically? Okay, so first we need to understand how we gonna do it mathematically. Then the same concept, the same procedure, we can put it in the programming by using the concept that which we have it in programming language, because system doesn't know anything, right? So you need to be always instruct system in such a way that we are teaching a kid for the first time, right? So let's get into the, how we can compare two numbers. How do we compare? How can we compare two numbers? So that is the first fundamental which we need to know. Okay, if you want to find which one is greater, right? So there will be some comparison which we do it in our mind. See, 30 and 40. Because 40 is greater than 30, that's why we say that number 2 is greater, right? So in order to compare two numbers, okay, we do operators like, greater than, less than, greater than or equals to, less than or equals to, double equals to, which is for equivalent, and then we have not equals to. So these are the, you know comparison or relation which we see between two numbers. So this we call it as in Java or any programming language, we call it as, these are the relational operators in Java. Okay, so these are the operators which we use it to, relate between two numbers, or it can be, anything. Okay, so these are the things which we use. These are the operators which we use. Okay, so by making use of this operator, we're gonna put it in the condition, and then we're gonna write the program for the same. So now let's write it, let's do it mathematically, and then we're gonna write a pseudocode, or maybe, we can say that a logic, and then we're gonna put into the same in the programming as well. Okay. So now if you want to, if you now we got how to compare two numbers using relational operator. Let's consider there are two numbers. One is number 30, the other one is number 40, right? So based on this, we're gonna, you know how do we compare two numbers? How do you say that mathematically? How do you say that this number 2 is greater or number 1 is greater? That is the basic point, which basic thing which we do, right? So in that case, I write a, let's write it mathematically, and then we get into the programming. Let's write a pseudocode for the same. Okay, so pseudocode is something like, if number 1 is greater than number 2, in that case, if you consider, if you could see, this number 1 is greater, which means this is greater number. If it is not greater, if this condition is false, if this condition is false, Okay, obviously this number 2 is greater, right? Because we are comparing only two numbers. So this number, we are just checking the condition whether this number 1 is greater than number 2 or not. If this condition is true, then we say that number 1 is greater. If this condition is false, obviously number 2 is greater, right? So this is basic funda which we do in our brain whenever you see two numbers, right? The same thing which we're gonna do it through programming as well. Okay, so obviously in the second statement, if it is not greater, number 1 is not greater, else number 2 is greater. So let us put this in the programmatical way. How we gonna do it in a programmatical way, right? So let's write a logic for greatest or largest number from two numbers. Okay, so I have two numbers. I am considering this as integers, number 1 and number 2. Number 1 is 10 and number 2 is also 10. Okay, so if number 2 can be any number. So number 1 is greater than number 2. If the condition is true, then obviously number 1 is greater. Else, it is number 2 is greater. Okay, so this is the logic which we're gonna use it for checking two numbers. Let us write it in the programmatical way. Let's put it in the program as well. So I'm using Eclipse as my editor. Now I'm gonna create a class here, and let me write a class. And this program is for greatest number. So I'm gonna use public static void main. These are the basic fundamental. So let me put it here. Okay, so public static void main, and inside this I'm gonna use like integer number 1 equals to 30, and then number 2 equals to 40, right? So I'm gonna write number 1 is greater than number 2. Then I'm gonna say that system.out.println say is greater. Else number 2 is greater. Okay, so what is the number which is greater here? If we consider by looking into the code, pseudocode, we know that number 2 is greater. So in that case, it has to print that number 2 is greater. Okay, so I'm running this program. Let's see whether it's giving me correct output or not. So number 2 is greater. Okay, see, it all depends on the individual whether they wanted to use the condition, how you wanted to use the condition. The condition plays a major role here. Okay, so in that case, if I can use this way as well. I can use number two. I can use this number 2 greater than number 1. In that case, if number 2 is greater than number 1, obviously here this number 2 is greater but not number 1, right? If this condition is false, then automatically it will come into the else statement and it will throw us number 1 is greater. So after changing this condition logic, still we can see what is the output. It is still number 2 is greater. Okay, so if you are using only one statement inside if condition, then you can remove these braces as well. It can still work. Okay, it can still work. For one statement, it will consider as, the compiler will consider as this is the only statement which is available inside if condition. So that is one more thing, guys. Okay, so this is about finding the greatest number. Okay, so let us get into the other logic which we have been, the other condition which we have been looking out, right? So person is eligible for voting. So this looks very simple, right? So how can we say that person is eligible for voting? We can say that if a person is greater than or equals to 18, then the person is eligible for voting, right? So what we're gonna do, pseudocode, if a person is greater than or equals to 18, then person is eligible for voting, else not eligible for voting, right? Very simple one. So what we're gonna do, I'll put it in the same way, like I can write a separate program for the same. So I can go in this way as well. So let me finish this slide and then get back to the program. Okay, so let us do mathematically first, and then we're gonna, write the pseudocode or maybe logic. Okay, and then we get into the programming. See, I am taking an integer person equals to 18. Okay, so this is a variable, person is a variable. This can be any name. So even you can use A, B, C, anything. So I just give the meaningful name. That's it. So integer person equals to 18. If person is greater than or equals to 18, so this is the condition which we need to check for. If this condition is true, which means we're going to say that the person is eligible for voting. Yes, obviously the person is not eligible for voting, right? So let me get into new class and eligible for voting. Public static void main, finish. Okay, so same thing, integer person equals to, I can write any number here. Okay, and if person is greater than or equals to 18, okay, I can say that person is eligible for voting, else I can say not not eligible for voting. Okay, so I'm running this code. Let's see. It has to throw as person is eligible for voting. Some can write logic in this way as well. The condition I can write, person less than 18. If a person is less than 18, which means a person is not eligible for voting. Okay, so both are correct. If you can ask, see, there is no hard and fast rule for writing the logic. You can, some who has good knowledge in mathematics, they can solve the problem statement in a simplest way. So you can put that in the same logic in the programming as well. Okay, so in that case, if you could write person is less than 18, then obviously it says that person is eligible for voting. So what we wanted to do inside this, if once the condition is true, so that is the thing which we need to remember, and based on that, the code has to be written, the statement has to be written. Okay, so let's get into the other problem statement which we have been discussing in, for as an example, odd or even. This is the most important question which would be asked in an interview. How do you check a given number is odd or even? So most of them will get confused, and they start writing loops, and they start writing, some other statements which they don't remember it. Okay. See, very simple funda which you need to know while writing the odd or even, right? So let us do this mathematically first. Let us understand how do you say that, how do we say that a number is odd or even? Okay, so how can we say that the number is odd or even? Is a number is divisible by, is said to be an even number if it is divided by 2 and leaves a remainder 0. Okay, so which means if you consider any number, okay, divide the number and which gives the remainder as 0, okay, then we say that is a even number, else it is an odd number. Okay, so let's write the pseudocode for the same. If a number is divided by 2 and leaves a remainder 0, then it is even number, else odd number. Obviously it is an odd number. Okay, so let us get into how we're gonna write a program for this same, right? Okay, so let's write a logic to check a given number is even number or odd number. We all know that, if a number is, if you want to find a remainder after integer division, we use something called mod operator, right? We know that mod operator, which is used to get the remainder, is mod operator. Let's see how we can use it. Okay, so we have used integer number equals to 37 here, and if number mod 2 double equals to is for to check equivalent. You cannot use single equals to, just like mathematics in mathematics 1. The single equals to is for assignment. If you could see here, this left hand, this single equals to, this is assignment operator, where whatever you see it in the right hand side value will get assigned to the left hand side. Okay, so it won't go in reverse order. Like, left hand side, we know that in mathematics, we say that true left LHS equals to RHS, left hand side is equals to RHS, right? So that doesn't work here. So whatever that is present in the right hand side, that will get assigned to the left hand side. If you write 37 equals to number, then that doesn't work. Okay, so that is where we give variable in the left hand side and the value in the right hand side. Okay, so if number mod 2 equals to, this is for equivalent of equivalent one, and this is for assignment one. You cannot use this equals to inside the condition. Do remember this. We cannot use single equals to inside any condition. It's not only if statement, it can be any statement. Okay, so we know that the mod operator which gives, we know that we all know that, if you still could not able to understand this mod operator concept, you can go back to my video and see for the mod operator one which is present. Okay, so the question would be asked like, what is the purpose of mod operator? It should be clearly explained, like a number, it can give the remainder after integer division. Okay, so to check a given number is odd or even, we use the number 2, because the remainder would be after you divide any number with 2, you'll get only either 0 or 1. Okay, so if it is equals to 0, which means it is completely divided by 2, then we can say that is an even number. Okay, if it is not, then we're gonna say that it is odd number. You cannot use any other number apart from 2, because mathematically, if you want to know a number which is even or odd, okay, so the 2, you need to use 2, not 3 or 4 or 10. Sometimes people write 10, sometimes they write 3, sometimes they write 6. So don't get confused. First, you need to understand how we're gonna solve it mathematically and understand it, and same thing can be implemented using the concept which we have explained. Okay, so that is where we're gonna use if number mod 2 equals to 0, then we can say that it is an even number, else it is an odd number. Okay, okay, so let's put it in the programming way and see whether it is giving the correct output or not. I'm going to create a class odd or even public static void main. I'm going to write a number integer number equals to 15. Okay, so if number mod 2 equals to 0, then I can say that it is even number. Since it is completely divisible and leaves a remainder 0, then it is even number. Else, I'm gonna say that it is odd number. Okay, so I can write the other way as well. I can say if number mod 2 not equals to 0, then I can say that it is an odd number, and else it is an even number. Both are same. One can write it like number mod 2 equals to 0, then it is an even number, or not equals to 0, then it is an odd number. Both are same. Okay, let me run this code. It is an odd number, it has to throw me odd number. Okay, so don't get confused whenever someone asks you to write a program to check a given number is odd or even. Very simple one. You just need to know what is the purpose of mod operator and what is the where you need to use it, how we can use, how can we use it, and where we can use it, right? And this is how to check a given number is odd or even program. Okay, so still get confused in writing the logics? Let me know in the comment section which programs are confusing. I can make a video for the same. First, I'll do it through mathematically and then put it in the programmatical way, so that you won't miss anything, right? Thank you very much for watching. Happy learning.